Welcome back to the Bleeding Hearts Club, where we alchemize pain into something beautiful together. I'm your co-host, Shroot. I'm an astrologer who uses self-reflective astrology as a tool for healing and growth, and this is my co-host.
Hi, y'all. My name is Stevie. I use they and she pronouns, and I am a tarot reader, Reiki practitioner, death and grief worker, and mental health professional. Hi.
I love it. So today we are going to do a horoscope. We are going to check in about the fact that we are officially 1 year in to the Bleeding Hearts Club existing in this world. Our 1 year anniversary has just passed, and but first, we wanted to start off in acknowledgement of the kind of chaos and turmoil and violence going on in the world, but particularly located in LA right now, where, I'm from California, Stevie's um, LA area based. So we wanted to just hold a little bit of space for that. And so we wanted to start this episode with a prayer that we want to invoke, that you guys can invoke with us. Around the kind of chaos and um, finding ways to resource ourselves through that chaos. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we can tend to ourselves in our communities. So if you want to get into the prayers, Stevie.
Yeah, y'all. Okay, so we call on our cosmic mothers, Santa Muerte, Kalima, Mother Earth. We call on the directions, elements, cosmos, and the divine. We call on our ancestors and guides, our rebels, our resistors, our organizers, and our helpers to help us create the space we need to process our emotions in a safe way so we can protect ourselves and each other. We pray for the protection and justice for those who need it. And we give thanks to our divine mothers for blessing us, caring for us, and nourishing us in all dimensions of time and space.
So I really hope you take that in, and feel free to replay that. We'll clip it and put it online so that it's pretty easy to access, because I think this is something that we're going to need to call on, not just now, but as the year goes on. So we'll get into why in the horoscope. But right now we are in a really tumultuous period of time. 2025 and 2026 were always projected to be very tumultuous in the global collective. We have a lot of outer planets shifting from one sign to another, which doesn't happen often. And what especially doesn't happen often is multiple of them shifting from one sign to another in a short span of time, like 2 years. So it is a period of chaos, upheaval, and deep calamities, deep disparities, and um, it's important that we know that this is our reality, and how can we take care of ourselves and each other through that. So one strategy that I really wanted to name is that in the short term immediate effects, if you are being affected by any kind of trauma as a result of, like, maybe you're a federal employee who's dealing with the trauma of what's going on, or you're personally affected by the ICE detentions, is something that you can do is actually, studies have shown that playing Tetris after experiencing a trauma can reduce the long-term effects of the trauma that you're experiencing. So I've been encouraging, people in my life, if they're personally affected by these things, it can't hurt to just play a little Tetris every night and make that kind of like a community activity that you do with people that you're, you know, in these stressful situations with. Like, if you guys just like sit in a circle and play some Tetris together, like, it seems like at a time like this, why would we be doing something so trivial? But it has proven positive effects when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And this is ultimately a marathon, not a sprint. And it's really important that we take care of ourselves and resource each other. So that's just one example of a strategy that we can use. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share, Stevie.
I think just resourcing yourself and like finding ways to regulate your own nervous system, even if it doesn't feel like there are long-term impacts, like of, maybe taking like 10-15 minutes to do just like a guided meditation or something like that. But it's really important to, I think, disrupt and like interrupt the time that you are feeling dysregulated. So even just like 5 minutes of a breathing exercise or just listening to, I don't know, those like healing frequencies can be supportive if you kind of like stick with it for a longer period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also body movement is really valuable. and just doing your best to move from states of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, if you're in any of those states, to figure out, okay, how can you use breath, movement, supporting and loving touch from other people, and affirmation from other people, whatever you kind of need, whatever combination of things to bring you into a state of finding safety, or finding a state of relaxation, because um, you got to pace yourself when it comes to these types of things. We got to work in relays. You got to think about it like that. So if you have to tap out and take care of yourself right now, understand that you're not checking out. You are taking care of yourself so that you can check back in, and tag back in. So please be really mindful of taking care of yourself and taking care of your community, and making sure that we're all cultivating habits that are supportive to our ability to um, I hate the word. I think it's such a buzzword now, but be resilient, in the face of the challenges ahead of us, because they're very real. So, yeah. I wanted to open with that. We hope you're doing okay. Feel free to write to us if what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. We would love to know, whether that's around the world, if you feel safe sharing, if you feel comfortable sharing. You can email us at bleedingheartsclub.pod@gmail.com. You can message us on Instagram at bleedingheartsclub.pod. And we'd love to be in community with you about whatever you're experiencing. And if you want, we can share that on the podcast as well, if you want to be in community in more of a public oriented way. And as usual, if you have any questions, you're so welcome to ask any social political questions, any questions that are very much oriented around what's happening in the world. Between Stevie's wellness mental health practitioner background and my social political economic background, we have a level of expertise on being able to speak on these things, and then also being able to speak on how you can resource yourself, how you can take care of yourself. So if you want to know how you personally can best navigate whatever tumultuous societal shifts that you're experiencing, how they're affecting you personally, feel free to write in, either on Instagram or email, with your date of birth, your time of birth, and your city, state, country, location of birth, and your question, and we'll give you a mini tarot reading and astrology reading to go with answering your question. And because we don't treat tarot and astrology as something hypothetical and removed from the social, political, economic, cultural collective of what's going on. We engage with these practices explicitly in the face of these things that are going on, and we use them as tools to help us cultivate the skills that we need and the self-reflective practices that we need to carry ourselves and each other through whatever happens. So all of these things are very much a part of our practices, and we feel equipped and comfortable to hold that space for you. So please take it if you need it, because I know it will benefit other people. So, with that being said, we do have a little bit of a personal celebration from the podcast standpoint, but Bleeding Hearts, we are a year old. It was last Gemini season that we birthed this baby into the world, and you all have showed up and showed out from all over the world. We have listeners from every continent, every habitable continent, I should say. And it has just meant the whole entire world to us. Two people with 12th house placements, two Scorpio dominant Libras who grew up not feeling seen or heard, are feeling very seen and heard by you all. So thank you so much. It means the whole entire world to us. And so we wanted to reflect a little bit about what this year has been like for us. And again, we would also love to know, what has the Bleeding Hearts Club done for you? How has this year of being in this community impacted you positively, negatively? We would love to hear. So feel free to email us or message us on Instagram and let us know. But Stevie, I'd love to hear your perspective of how has this year been for you with the podcast?
Yeah, it's been wild, y'all. I am someone who, I don't like being in the public space. Every time I share one of those TikToks, if you follow us on Instagram or TikTok, anytime I'm speaking and I have to post that, or I die a little bit inside. But that I think just ties back to the fact that I'm not used to that. I'm not used to having space to take up, or like space that I'm willingly taking up. So it's been a journey, but I'm sure it's nourishing my freaking Leo Mars placement too. And yeah, it's been really lovely, and I know a lot of listeners in person. Like a lot of my community members have listened to this podcast, and anytime I see them, they have nothing but good things to say about how much it resonates with them. And that to me is really, really, I mean, that's worth it all. I think it's been really beautiful and nourishing because I am sometimes the only time I'm pulling a card is for this podcast, and because I can be a little bad at checking in with myself and stuff. So it's a also a really good practice for me to just pause and check in with myself and check in with the collective. And it's been really beautiful. I love hearing everybody's feedback. Even like there's somebody who follows us, has followed our TikTok from the very beginning, who Shroot and I do not know in person. And like recently, they just commented on one of our TikToks and just said that they love like watching our YouTube episodes. And that like meant the world to me because it happened at a time where I was like, I don't want my space to be seen anymore. Like you know, yeah, I think we're nourishing each other and it's been really freaking cool. And I feel very LA every time I'm in a space and I'm like, hi, I'm Stevie. Like, here's who I am. I also have a podcast, which so does everyone else in Southern California, but mine's special. But yeah, okay, that's me. I'm gonna land this plane here. Shroot, what are your reflections and thoughts?
Yeah, I think I it's like it's hard to put it into words because I've said this before. I don't think it's new information to y'all, but I have been disabled and bedridden for 10 years, and there was a large chunk of this 10 years that I couldn't commit to anything, you know, more than a day away, or even I would have to cancel, I'd always have to commit to things with the caveat that, hey, I have to cancel. Like if I'm feeling unwell, suddenly I have to cancel. So, like, to go from not even being able to hold something as simple as like grabbing lunch with a friend or something to, you know, creating, producing, recording, editing, uploading a podcast consistently. I know, we've had to change the frequency, we've taken a little breaks, but, you know, at the end of the day, we've done it in a way that has been supportive to our health and supportive to ourselves. And so I just feel so proud. Like, it's like I'm like starry-eyed. Like I don't even have words to describe just the awe that I feel that this was possible because there's so much of the last 10 years of my life that could have never seen this as a possibility. It was something that I would have never been able to do. And to not only have it be something that is a personal point of achievement from like a logistic standpoint of, hey, I could commit to this thing and I could put it out and I could make it happen, but to have it be a self-reflective tool that others, can use. Some of the best feedback I've gotten is that, some of my clients who have used the stuff that we talk about in our podcast, any of the actionable strategies, and improving the relationships they have in their lives. Or I've had clients where, um, for whatever reason, if life is getting so hectic, they're not able to keep up readings with me anymore. This podcast was still a lifeline for them to be able to hold on to. I've had people tell me that just hearing my voice, I've had people say anything from it makes me feel so soothed and I feel so safe to it makes me feel alive. It makes me feel so energized and like I can go get anything. And uh, I just don't have words for how amazing that feels. I could, if I really think about it long enough and really sit in this energy long enough, I'll start crying. Like just because I never would have thought that was possible, from me, for me. So that's been, the reception of this podcast and how it has been so validating for us, especially because I think Stevie and I think I am better at not coming. Like I think I hide this really well, but Steve and I both have dealt with people invalidating the hell out of our, knowledge, experience, skill sets. And like, this is like a true testament to like the almost like the validity of how important our work is and how much it matters that we show up even through these kind of doubts and fears and past experiences and a real commitment to being the change that we wish to see in the world and so that's been amazing as well. And then lastly for me it's like this has been such a powerful self-reflective exercise, because um, we record these podcasts with any frequency of advance notice. Sometimes it's been like a month and a half in advance when we're life is together and we're on top of it. Sometimes like this one, it's days in advance. Um, and either way, as we ourselves are scrolling social media and seeing the clips go up, um, the clockery comes for us too, It's like, when I'm feeling really agitated and really like I need something grounding, I'll put the podcast on myself and I'll use it as a self-reflective tool. So it has been really powerful, I think. And I think this is a lesson maybe for all of us that like we can be our own source of self-regulation and self-reflective space, this idea that I recorded a horoscope, whenever I did it, early in advance or right on time, like it doesn't matter. It's like I can come back to it and use it as a point of self-reflection and soothing. That's something that we all can do, It doesn't have to be horoscope specific. It can just be anything. Like, affirmations that you record for yourself now when you're feeling really good. What is a little love note that you can record for yourself when you're feeling really down? You know, when you think about the most kind of like afraid or ashamed version of yourself, like when you're feeling like you're at your peak, when you're doing real good, like what words of support do you have to offer that version of yourself? And can you create these kind of resources that you can lean on in like an auditory fashion or a visual if you want to do video as well fashion? But yeah, I think that has been the biggest lesson, I think, for me is that like there is so much power in like me using my voice, using my image as a tool for self-reflection for other people, but as well as for myself. So I've loved it.
What a year. What a freaking year. I think about how this podcast is just an ongoing testament to our practice of alchemizing pain into something beautiful. Last month was the 5-year anniversary from when that man,
My mortal enemy.
that man that I dated, um, when he did some fuck shit and his mistreatment of me, or like just basically like I guess ongoing practice of not seeing me as a human or my own person, just researched years after we broke up, years after we talked. And I just remember it being such a surprising and violating experience that I just, oh my God, y'all, I was so pissed and I was not okay. But I think about, how that brought me to Shroot. Like, I think Shroot at this time, like, we weren't friends. Like,
Yep.
we were acquaintances. I knew nothing about Shroot. Shroot knew some things about me, but we were not fully formed pals. But Shroot was just one of my first points of contact in trying to figure out how to approach this situation because I was tired and I was triggered. I was really activated. And that reading gave me the courage and insight to speak out publicly about it instead of doing what I usually did, which was trying to do damage control in the background. And so I never talked to him about this. I fully wrote my little like statement on my iPhone notes app, took screenshots, and I posted it up. And I remember it being so terrifying. And oi, oi, oi. But that I was really able to let that go. I was really able to like transmute that into something different, to break a cycle. And it brought Shroot and I so much closer because I think maybe a month or two after is when I was instructed by like some practitioner to start reading tarot. And then that is how I started reading tarot. Like I did one of my first readings with Shroot, and that's how we formed this joint reading, which formed this podcast. And it's just wild to see how this snowballed into something completely different and something beautiful and empowering and loving and nurturing. So, wow, just wow.
I love to unite against a common enemy.
Yes.
Fastest way to win me over. I'm a hater at heart.
Hmm, hmm.
You are a devotee of Santa Muerte. I'm devotee of Kalima. We will gather those. No problem. Even if it's scared and scary and hard, we will uh gather the hose and we will unite in doing so. So
Yes.
uh,
Um,
makes me so
that makes
happy.
that makes me think of like I think about hellhounds, but like when we're gathering hoes, I think of like a border collie. Or wait, what is that kind of dog? Hold on.
Like a sheepdog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely that kind of dog. Like those are our hellhounds.
They're like so cute, but they will gather you.
Yep. They have a mission. They're gonna do it. So,
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so we'd love to know what your growth has looked like this year. How have you been alchemizing pain into something beautiful? Have you put any of our strategies into practice? What has bloomed from putting yourself out there in unfamiliar and scary ways? Yeah, let us know. Email us, Instagram us. I'd also love to know. I am me, and I have kept a very meticulous record of all of the feedback that we've ever gotten about the podcast because I'm a Libra and I can't find the plot to save my life. So I need to be housing data to remember what the plot is at all times if I need to. And my takeaway from all the feedback that we've gotten over the last year, which it's so much, I'm so grateful. It makes me so happy. I feel so seen. But the feedback has been that we're really helping you neutralize the shame in your life. And that shame is a big theme of what you're experiencing a transmutation around. And so we'd love to know, should we talk more about that? And if you have any questions around shame that you want us to talk about, if you have any roadblocks you found over the course of this year that, like, yes, you're dealing with shame, but like this is what you're struggling with and stuck on with right now, we'd love to know. And then also that, like, the overarching theme that people have really been receiving from us is, how to navigate the various relationships of the various versions of ourselves, our traumas, the earth, our ancestors, and other people. Which I think, like, exploring these types of relationships is so Venus and Scorpio of me and Stevie. And that's really what we're here to do. And so, if you have any questions around that, if you have any specifics around those topics that you'd like us to go more into, we are a treasure trove of resource and experience we would love to share. So, yeah, let us know. We'll get into it. Do we want to get into our tarot scope, Steve?
Believe we do. Okay. I don't have the box to show you,
Valid.
but I pulled cards from the Capua Tarot deck, which is going to be linked in our show notes and things of that nature. Um, it's juicy. I think, I mean, personally, this week I have felt very dysregulated and out of control and just kind of in despair. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here. So I feel like this deck really does a lot in like holding me in that. Maybe it'll hold you in that, but this deck, I think, really makes me think of just resilience, I think, um, and resistance and just doing what we can. So that's just kind of the energy that I was channeling when I pulled these cards. But as always, we have three cards. These are in Tagalog, so I'm gonna try my best. But the first one is Isa ang balat. Balat, balat. There are no accent marks in Tagalog, so I don't know where the accents go. But this card in the traditional deck is the One of Cups, I think. Yeah, I hope so. Um, I think with everything going on right now, there is a heightened sense of confusion, anger, fear, despair. Maybe I don't even know if I said despair earlier, but that is definitely like an emotion that's been present for me. Um, this card is very much emphasizing the need to connect with your emotions and your spirit, whether it's like your personal spirit, like spirituality in general. I think because everything is so heightened and chaotic, we may be leaning in to avoidance or detachment or dissociation. I know that I've been doing that, but like I try to go on TikTok for a laugh and then I just see a bunch of videos of the reality of the horrors of the world and in my communities. And, it's like, I think that's almost like a reminder that like I can't avoid my feelings. In fact, I'm being called to sit with them and confront them and not try necessarily to change them, but just to honor those feelings as they are because they're natural responses to my environment, to maybe like my intergenerational trauma, my historical trauma. Um, Sometimes people, like myself, sometimes like don't know how to be with their emotions, or maybe the emotions feel so big and scary that they don't even know how to approach them, because it feels like like pulling a thread that just like completely undoes the whole sweater. I'm thinking about Weezer. That one song, Sweater? I don't know. um, but yeah, I think in the short term, it is helpful, to practice these things like dissociation and detachment. Like these are protective practices that have a function. They keep us safe. But these like defense mechanisms and coping mechanisms are not necessarily for the long term. Like they keep us safe in the moment, but when all of these things are much more prolonged and chronic, like it is unsustainable. And then it kind of, bleeds through the fabric of all these other areas of our life. And our body, keeps these stories, it keeps these feelings. So when Shroot was saying things like, moving your body or practicing some way to express them or have an outlet, like this is an important time to kind of call those things in and figure out what works for you, even if it's like creating a little self-care menu. Like if you have I need to find some sort of like document or something that's like, a self-care menu, appetizers. Like, what are some like
I'm
really
making those on my
you
Instagram.
are?
Yeah, I'm making them for each sign. You can see on my Shroot Trees account. You'll see it linked in the show notes. But yeah, I have for each sign every season. I'm putting a dopamine menu is what I'm calling it.
Okay.
So yeah, you
Okay,
can
we're
see those.
so in sync.
I know.
Okay, amazing. Keep an eye out for those. But yeah, this is, like Shroot said, a marathon, not a sprint. So we need to find ways to sustain ourselves and keep ourselves nurtured and cared for. And I think more than ever, we need connection. Like our, I think for a lot of people who listen to this podcast, like we are so used to doing things ourselves and hiding our emotions and at the same time, like trying to be everything and everything for other people. And that again is not a sustainable practice and it pushes us further away from holding space for ourselves. So we need to connect more with other people. And that means sharing yourself and your emotions honestly with other people. One, so we can name it and hold space for that, but also like neutralize the shame and like bigness of what our experiences are, so we can also like hold that space for each other. Like these are, I think, practices of reciprocity that we really need to keep us going, to like release whatever we're holding on to make space for optimism and movement and hope and all of these things. So if you feel like you don't have anyone, I get that. I really get that. Just a gentle reminder that your ancestors are there, your connection to nature and your guides are there, the birds are there. Um, I don't know who I got this from. I probably saw it on TikTok or something, but someone was just saying like birds don't chirp, they don't sing when it's unsafe. So if you hear birds chirping outside or singing outside, just use that as like a reminder that you are safe, even if it's just in that singular moment. The present moment is all we have. So savor that for what it is. The land is there, the animals are there, the stars are there, your elder self is there. So just call on what you do have, even if it doesn't feel like an immediate connection or that they're immediately accessible. There are still things there. So write in your little diary, in your little notes app, reach out to the little gay people in your phone and just know that you're not alone. We are also the little gay people in your phone. So send us an email, send us a DM. We're here. And yeah, that is One of Cups. True?
Ooh, yeah. I actually really love that this is the card that showed up because I was always going to open the horoscope with Jupiter in Cancer, and I just think that this card is just such a perfect choice of cards. I was wondering, I was like, I wonder which card will be the Jupiter in Cancer one. And I'm so glad it's is it Ace of Cups, right? One of Cups? I'm like, same thing? Okay, cool. Um, yeah, so Jupiter has moved into Cancer. It moved into Cancer on June 9th, and it's going to spend a year in Cancer. And Jupiter is a sign that the easiest way to explain it is that Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It expands whatever it touches. And so oftentimes it is denoted as the lucky planet, the abundance planet, the growth planet. But, you know, I'm A, Scorpio dominant, B, I got Jupiter in Scorpio. So I'm not here to espouse the virtues of Jupiter exclusively. I'm here to say, Jupiter expands whatever it touches, good or bad. Um, growth for growth's sake is also known as cancer. And like not the cancer that is about emotional nourishment, it's the cancer that's about, the disease. Um, so like when we think about Jupiter in Cancer, really what Jupiter is asking of us is to expand our capacity to hold space for our emotions. So Cancer energy is about emotions. It's about what something I've been really thinking about in terms of Cancer energy. Like I've had a really hard time relating to Cancer energy. I have a lot of Cancer friends and thank God for them because they hold what I can't. Um and the moon and Cancer have been aspects of astrology that have been the hardest for me to grasp because I have Lilith conjunct my moon in my chart. And so there's a lot of toxic associations that I have with the moon and with Cancer energy. And so I have a hard time seeing the totality of the experience. And so that's something I've actively been working on my whole time as an astrologer, as the birth of my practice. I do new moon monthly manifestation workshops. And the reason I did that was because the question I asked myself about 6 months into being a professional astrologer was, what does the moon have to teach me? Um, because I was like, I don't know. I've never taken the moon very seriously. And I built moon mapping because I understood that I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't rely on anything. I couldn't make commitments. I couldn't plan anything in my life. And I couldn't figure out how to track things according to my cycle. I got like any of the things that people use to like mark time and make plans, I couldn't do it. So I said, let me study what's going on with me in accordance with the moon cycle. And I studied, oh, this is when I have, I'm triggered in the mom wound department. This is when my health is especially flared up. This is when I have really bad dreams. Like, anything that had to do with stuff I was struggling with, I just took note of like, where's the moon in the sky? And, obviously I did the astrology because that's my job. I'm good at that. But like, it was so much information. It was so much data that I was able to gather that deepened my understanding of myself. And so what I would say that the moon has taught me over the last 6 years of being a professional astrologer is that the moon demand isn't even the right word. The moon requests, the moon asks us to make space for emotions. And so much of Cancer energy is about holding that space, holding that shallow pool of water that allows our emotions to swim freely in that pool of water and both arrive and leave that pool of water as needed. So I was thinking about like those live stream cams of like aquariums. where you can see the fish and the sharks and the, floating in and out of frame, and I think of our emotions like that, where, there's so many little fishes, there's so many, bigger sharks, there's so many kind of like different aspects of our emotional ecosystem. And at any given time, they are floating in and out of frame, they are coming in and out of focus. And so, um, learning to understand that it was my job, it's my responsibility to be the vessel that holds those emotions, and to also be the facilitator of the flow of the emotions going in and out. And so that's the relationship between Capricorn and Cancer. If that wasn't obvious, Capricorn is that structure, right? What is the structure that we need to feel safe enough to experience and express those Cancerian emotions? And so with Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter is asking us to expand our capacity to hold these emotions. So, my question to you then is, what structural supports do you need to make that happen? What community supports do you need to make that happen? So, Stevie gave a bunch of examples, and I completely agree and echo all of those. But I really encourage to spend this next year really making a conscious effort to expand your capacity to hold your emotions and to cultivate community practices so that collectively your collective community can expand your capacity as well. And if you are, a bleeding heart, if you are a person that is used to expanding to hold the emotions of other people, I invite you that Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So if this is your pattern, if this is your norm, that you hold more space for the emotions of others than you do for your own, it will be untenable this year. It will be unsustainable. You will have a crisis of this experience. It will come to a head this year. So I really encourage the primary place to start, right? We always say put your oxygen mask on before putting, helping the person next to you. So you need to make sure that there is space for your emotions. And so, what community supports, what structural supports do you need to feel safe holding your emotions? And lastly, if your emotions don't matter to you, then you are not holding space for them. Like, if you don't factor them in as, like, my emotions are a priority, my ability to hold and wield my emotions are my priority, then you don't have any space for them to begin with. And so it's really important that you focus on making space for your emotions, because and not just making space, but valuing making space for your emotions and making that a priority, because at the end of the day, like, our emotions are a driving force in our lives, and we can be really intentional about what direction we want to go in when we treat our emotions and we interpret our emotions as information instead of irritants. So, like, by honoring the fact that, like, oh, I'm really angry right now and I need to, like, do something about that. So, I can give a personal example. I just had a reading before this one, and it was with a family member, and oh my God, did it activate me. Whoo! And I was like, well, I have to hop on this podcast and, like, offer the space that I hold on this podcast. I need to transmute that anger very quickly. And so my first instinct, I was like, oh, let me go do some wall push-ups, let me do some high knees, let me do some deep breathing, all these kind of like textbook things that I know help with anger. And it helped to a certain degree. It got me moving. But really what I was itching for, I was like, I need to put on a full face of makeup. And I haven't put on a full face of makeup in a long time. Like I used to beat my face every single day. I was the 2016, falsy like eyelash, under eye concealer. I had the full beat, every day. And I used to think it was my barometer for knowing whether I was well enough to go to class. I thought that it was my disability barometer. But what I learned literally in the minutes before recording this podcast was that I was really angry. I had so many reasons to be so angry. And that having to be out in the world, be perceived, and do life with that anger, one of the most valuable tools of transmutation that I had in my toolkit as a Libra was to put on a full face of makeup. There was something about wearing makeup, and especially bold makeup that's really dramatic, that made me feel like my anger was something that was a source of power. It was a source of strength. It was a source of energy. It was a resource for me instead of something that was taxing on me and depleting me. And I had never put those things together until literally today, like, 30, 40 minutes ago. So it's like the reason that I was able to put that together is because I created space, right? I said, I know I need to transmute this anger before I get on this podcast. So what do I need? And I went through the motions, step one, step two, step three. Those three didn't really, I mean, they created space, which is what I needed, but they didn't actually like solve the issue of transmuting my emotions. what step one, two, and three of breath work, of high knees, of doing wall push-ups, what creating that movement and space within my body achieved is me knowing exactly what I needed. And when I did what I needed, I feel like I've transmuted my anger into power. And I'm sitting in my power and I'm feeling really good about that. And I'm also feeling really good that like I learned this about myself. And this is something that I've done for so long. And I thought that it was more about conforming to societal expectations or protecting myself as a disabled person, feeling less vulnerable, being so like disabled out in the world. I thought that that's what it was about. When now I know, no, it was about transmuting my anger into power. That was really freaking angry. And now I have a tool in my toolkit of knowing what I can do in the future with when I'm angry. So I just wanted to give that example of like emotions as information and how much more intentional I can be with my life if I use my emotions as information and use that information as a driving force for the decisions that I make when navigating my life. And that is what Jupiter in Cancer has to offer us if we consciously open ourselves up to receive that and put the effort in to make space for us to feel emotions and to create those community and structural support systems for us to feel those emotions.
I love.
You got me feeling emotion. Where are the lambs? Tap in if you're a lamb. Anyway,
Wait, what is that?
a Mariah Carey stan? The
Oh,
lambs.
the lambs. Yeah, I'm
Anyway,
Stan adjacent. Mhm, mhm.
I gotta deepen your Mariah
Yes,
knowledge because she's everything. Anyway,
yes. I have many people in my life who will yell at me for this, but who love Mariah Carey, and so I love her. I need to deepen my knowledge because what else am I gonna do? You ready for the next card?
hell yeah.
Okay. Also, you like talking about like doing a full face of makeup and everything. It has really deepened my desire to dye my hair. I haven't dyed my hair in a
Been a
very long
while.
time. This is all my hair now. This is all my real, like undyed hair. So it's been a minute. I've been good and I want it purple again. I want the color of your earrings is my natural hair color.
Mhm. Hell yeah.
That's what it should be at all times. And you know, maybe, maybe I'll get there. Okay. The next card is truly my angel. This in the traditional deck is the Queen of Swords, which I feel like the Queen of Swords always shows up in my readings for myself. Maybe Shroot, does she show up in yours?
Sometimes. Not
Yeah.
often though. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just with
This
you.
this card in Tagalog is nakatatanda ang balaibo ang ibon, which is like elder of basically feathers, something like that. So okay, so we were talking about our emotions and holding space for that, and this card is kind of focusing on bringing our attention to our consciousness and our mental knowing, like the things that we know, the things that we believe, very much a focus on our beliefs, our values, and our attitudes, which we talk about a lot here and in particular how they move us, like what it drives us to do, how we act, how we make decisions because of it. And I think this card is coming at a pretty interesting time. I think it's an elder, like an elder card, who's coming to us, bringing in their wisdom from their own experiences, the experiences that they have lived through, the things that they've seen, but also carrying the wisdom of those who came before them. So, like our ancestral lineages, our like histories of resistance and knowledge in our medicine, and what we're going through right now in any sense of the word. It's not new, for better or for worse, and maybe that brings grief and exhaustion, but it's also reminding us of our power and our resilience. With this card, I'm thinking a lot about the province that I come from in the Philippines. It's called Nueva Ecija. It's in central Luzon. Luzon is the island where Manila is, and for a few different reasons, like that province is part of some really significant moments of resistance in history, both against Spanish colonial rule, like through the cry of Nueva Ecija in 19, no, not 19, 1896, but also during World War II. Like my family's home used to be a like Japanese imperialist like government site. But in Nueva Ecija, they were fighting against Japanese imperialist rule. There are a lot of like guerrilla warfare fighters there. And so I'm thinking a lot about them and just what that land, what the people have gone through, how they've banded together, how they resisted. Philippines, they're on their journey. There's a lot going on there. But anytime I'm feeling despair or hopelessness, I think about them and kind of call on that energy to bring myself back to radical optimism and radical hope, and reminding myself that, I mean, that's in my blood. That is from my land. That is the energy that I carry with me. And I want to remind you of just how resistance shows up in your own bloodline, in your own history. Like, I'm not even like tapping into like Mexico and everything that is, but yeah, it's in all of us in some way, shape, or form. We are here because of them, and our descendants are there because of us. But none of this is new. It just takes on new forms. And I think a quote that really stands out to me right now is it's from this person in Long Beach who does a lot of healing work. She's with the Earth Lodge Center for Transformation in West Long Beach. In ritual with her and in ceremony with her, she was talking about crystals and how we use crystals for a lot of different like healing components. And one thing she said is that like we use the crystals until we become the crystals. So as you get older, we have that knowledge, we have that power, we have that medicine, and that it becomes intrinsic, something that we can source within ourselves, and less so on like external forces. So we are becoming the crystals. And if you need to call on the crystals, if you need anything of that nature, like use that. But just know that you are also becoming a site of medicine and power and resilience and all these things. This card is also just acknowledging and honoring the fear that is continuously arising, but it does not want you to succumb to it. It doesn't want you to like fall into despair or stay in it. It doesn't want you to freeze or, like anything that we're doing that kind of brings us to an extreme reaction. Although they are natural reactions, again, these are coming with emotions that give us a lot of information, and we really need to sit with that and hold space for that, so that we're not just acting from a place of a fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, or anything else that comes up for us, or that we're not, I think, heavily relying too much on coping skills that may be harmful to us or harmful for us. So as we are coming back to a place of consciousness and beliefs and, what our actions are going to be, focus on what is in your control right now. A lot of things aren't, but there are many things that are. What helps you shift from these dysregulated states so that you can move from a more grounded place, and a place where you don't feel so helpless and don't feel, overcome by despair, where you feel like, okay, I am a community member. I am a person. Like, there are things that I can bring in. There are things that I can do. And there are things that I can do with other people too. Like, again, coming back to this need for connection, for community, for vulnerability. It makes me think of all these calls that I've made for y'all to practice vulnerability and to find community, to, you know, band together with other people and other sources of support because you can't do this alone. This is not something that we're meant to do alone. In whatever, you know, sense these cards are resonating with you, yeah, around. So think before you move forward. You have to be tactical, you have to be logical. And that doesn't mean that you have to be removed from your emotions altogether. It's just a matter of bringing yourself back to a more balanced and grounded state so that you can be intentional and that you can move from a place where you're not, you know, I'm just thinking about SpongeBob and like SpongeBob's brain, everything's on fire. He threw out everything that wasn't about fine dining. And, you know, don't move, don't move from that space, if that makes sense. But yeah, just bringing some clarity to you. Okay, true.
Oh my goodness, I have so many thoughts. So I hope I get to them all and I don't forget them because they're like spilling out of my brain. But first I wanted to say that just as a little like note of encouragement. This is true for like majority of my clients, and majority of the people I work with, but there is something really specific about Filipino ancestors that just leaps in every single reading that I do. And yeah, I think there's really something to be said. I just really wanted to give a little note to any of our Filipino listeners that like yes, there has been, multiple waves of colonialism. Yes, it has deeply, ingrained and infected like how like everything shook out and shakes out and all the norms. And, I totally know that. I've grown up with Filipino people my whole life, so I really know that and I get that. But in all of that, there is an unshakable spirit of your ancestors. And it has just been the most consistent thing I've seen with every Filipino person I've ever met. And so I really think that that is a tool in your toolkit that you should not discount. And this is true for everybody. I just want to emphasize, I'm not saying this like only to Filipino people. It's just that it has been 100% of the Filipino people I've ever seen, hung out with, worked with. The ancestors are leaping and there's so much strength, specifically strength in Filipino ancestors. And so I really encourage all Filipino listeners to, what does it look like to have an active practice with your ancestors? Even just being like, I call on the strength of my ancestors. It's okay if you don't know any answers, it's okay if you're removed from a lot of stuff. It's okay if, Catholicism or any of the cultural norms that have been forced by any of the waves of colonialism. It's okay if all of that has, given you an inability to like know to what to call on. Literally just be like, I really open up space to receive the strength of my ancestors and kind of notice how that impacts your life and what do you feel as a result of that, and make that a regular practice. And I would say that's true for anybody who feels a disconnect from their ancestors because um, we are proof that our ancestors had strength, we are their strengths, right? And so um, that was one. Next is I really think that astrologically, this card is referencing this period of transition that we're in where Uranus is in the final degree of Taurus, and on July 7th, it's going to move into Gemini. And I loved that Stevie referenced World War II because that was actually where Uranus was in the sky when World War II happened, was Uranus and Gemini. So we are kind of in a time that echoes World War II, which is so fun for us. I love that for us. And so what was the thing I wanted to say? Right. Uh, Another thing that's co-present in Taurus is Venus. Venus is co-present in Taurus. And so what CV was saying about being conscious of what beliefs, patterns, thoughts, values you kind of like are perpetuating as normal for you, like that's something that I think really came up during the pandemic. I remember in the pandemic, the thing that I saw the most often from people is that whatever your coping strategies were, whatever your go-to when shit hits the fan, like everybody leaned really hard on that. And for better or for worse, it was like whatever your strategies that you had cultivated up until that point, that was what was going to be the thing that would carry you through. And so, we saw a lot of people turning to spirituality. We saw a lot of people turning to substances. We saw a lot of people turning to baking bread. We saw a lot of people turning to, checking out we saw a lot of people turning to the streets. We saw, various things. We saw all types of stuff during the pandemic, which is still ongoing, by the way. And I think that what's happening now with Venus co-present in Taurus with Uranus in the last degrees of Uranus and Taurus is that we are being asked to understand that the way that we may have coped with things in the past is not set in stone. And that each time we draw on that coping strategy, we are setting it in stone. And so, like Stevie said, I loved what Stevie said about how we become the crystal. So, my question to you is what kind of crystal do you want to be? And with each coping strategy that you lean on, with each belief that you perpetuate, your thoughts that you perpetuate, the values that you keep carrying on, the idea that these are fixed elements in your life is not true. And the last 8 years of Uranus in Taurus is asking us to not see these things as fixed and is asking us to see these things that we rely on as something that we are in active co-creation with. So, what crystal would you like to become? What do you want to etch into stone when it comes to your values, your beliefs, your skills, the things that matter to you, and how you use them to cope in stressful situations? Um, and what would you want to do differently? And so I would really encourage, like, as Uranus moves into Gemini on the 7th, and then also Venus moves into Gemini on the 4th, like, you know, oh, sorry, July 4th to be specific. Like, in July, like, thinking about, like, what do you want to do differently? And how do you want to, like, change your thoughts, change your patterns, change your habits, your beliefs, like, take one thing and really just try to see it through with that and be like, well, this is what I want to actively choose. This is the crystal that I want to be. This is what I want to carve into stone. And understand that you have active choice in that just as much as these were things that you picked up along the way. And so, yeah, I really want to emphasize that um, we're in this big transition this month that's feeling like the things that we've relied on up until this point, not reliable anymore. And so you need to be really honest with yourself about what traits, coping strategies you're relying on that you just should not rely on anymore, and what actions can you take concretely to pivot away from them, and what conscious choices can you make to move in the direction of what you're looking to rely on. So,
What a time. What a journey.
a lot.
A journey. Y'all ready for the last card?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the Fool's back, everybody. Hooray! But he's reversed. So I'm gonna show you upright the Fool. He's living, laughing, loving. He's walking on the clouds, or so it looks like. I think he's got a little tear. He's fully naked. This is a, like, what's it called? Reversed? Yeah. Um, okay. As humans, I think, I'm thinking a lot about like the impacts of colonial rule and everything that comes with, but I think we've really been conditioned to try to be in control when we've had our lives, our rights, our practices stripped away. Like there's only so many things that we have control over, and sometimes that has shown up in a really extreme way. And we try to control the things we can because we want to know that we're going to be okay. We want to know that like our loved ones and our lives are going to be secure and safe. And I get that. I really do because I have OCD. And I try to control everything, even though there's no point in that. We're not taught as much to move freely with life, to move with the elements, the directions, the moon, the sun, like the seasons, anything like that. And I think we become so stuck and rigid because we're just trying to exercise the control over the things that we have, even if it's just like an illusion. And I think control in many ways is an illusion, but that's neither here or there. But I think when we get so caught up in trying to control, we end up being a little reckless. We end up being like a little selfish and just generally like not super aware of how we're trying to control other people and our circumstances and their circumstances. Maybe we're trying to prevent like just the natural consequences and frequency of life happen. And that has impacts like your behaviors, your actions, your thoughts are not only impacting yourself, but they're impacting other people. And I think trying to disrupt how life and things are supposed to play out. Um, and I'm thinking about our inner children right now, like our inner children who've maybe like experienced so much trauma and lack of control and fear and anger. And when we give in to this fear, to these emotions, this like, I don't want to call it erraticism, but it's just like very chaotic, frazzled energy. When we give into that and act on that or act from that place, then we are no longer protecting our inner children. We are becoming them. And we're no longer being the kind of adult who needed to be around to protect them, to regulate them, to take care of them. And so, I mean, then there's no trusted adult around. So I think I hope all of that makes sense, but I think this full reversed card is reminding us that we need to be the trusted adult, that we need to stay calm, we need to stay grounded, we need to move from a value based and intentional place, because if we're giving in to these dysregulated thoughts and emotions, if we are giving into our ego, like an ego in the sense that like not even just like I feel like I'm better than everybody else, or I think I know better, or everybody needs to rely on me. Like ego, there are big egos, but there are also like small egos who, like that makes you feel like you can't do anything, that like you need to rely on other people, that you need to like that you have no power or impact on what your life is and what it looks like. So check your ego, check in with yourself and what your thoughts are telling you. I can't do this, or no one can show up for me, or like I need to control other people's behaviors or actions, because if I don't, then like X, Y, and Z is going to happen. Like, I'm sure you are coming from a good place. And I'm sure maybe you feel like you know what's best. And just because you know what's best or feel like you know what's best doesn't mean that that is something that other people need to enact on. This is like a very jumbled message, and I hope y'all can make sense of it. But at the end of the day, you need to learn how to be the trusted adult. You need to practice regulating yourself, being with your emotions, taking care of your emotions, and just trying to figure out like what you need in these moments where everything feels like so much, everything feels like you're out of control. Sometimes that also means like you reach out to other people. On Friday, I texted the group chat with Shroot and Andrew, and after weeks of not responding, after being very absent and just, sharing a freaking SpongeBob sticker here and there, because that's all I can do. But I was able to check in with myself and say, I feel scared. I feel really stressed. I feel really powerless. And just bringing that into the space alone allowed for another trusted adult to take care of me, aka Shroot, who offered support in a way that like really resonated with me and helped me feel grounded enough to like get through the next day and get through this day. So be a trusted adult, call on other trusted adults, be a trusted adult for someone else, um, check yourself because we need to, and check in with yourself. Yeah, I just, yeah. There's that. That is the end.
The fool is not stepping off our necks, which, I really appreciate. I'm really, I know that like as a listener from the perspective of needing that trusted adult, like you're saying, I'm like, again, life is so hard. How do we find the fool in how hard life is? Like, this is a lot. This is a big ask. And then as a practitioner, as that trusted adult, I'm like, well, that's why you need to do it. And I just want to remind the disclaimer that like, as Scorpio dominant people with me and Stevie, when we give advice that's like find play, find lightness, find joy, find community, we aren't saying these for fun. We aren't saying these like they're optional. We're not saying these like these are the first things that can get cut when you're limited in capacity. We are saying these as they are the bedrock to you having capacity in the first place. Um, and so I think that that is a real misconception in our kind of society that is so distorted in its power relations, where we are taught that care work, that care-oriented labor is not valuable, not worth recognizing, not worth prioritizing, whether it is for ourselves or for other people. We're in this more individualized society than we've ever been in. Like, and so, yeah, I just really want to emphasize that, like, that's why this card is coming up. It's because we need it right now. This is a really hard time, and hard times require really soft hearts. And so that's what the Fool is asking about. So I just want to leave that there. But in terms of the astrology, it is really interesting, y'all. So I wanted to highlight a specific transit. I think what I'm going to say is a little bit of a add-on to what Stevie's saying, as opposed to like echoing it in more depth, which is what I usually do. But on June 15th, we are having two cataclysmic transits. They are loud and proud and very much fighting for attention and um, dominance. So we are going to be having in some of the last degrees of Taurus, we're having Mars and Leo squared Taurus, Uranus and Taurus. And then we're going to be having Jupiter and Cancer square Saturn in Aries. And this is on the same day, June 15th. And then later on in the month, we're going to be having the sun come in aspect. And on the 22nd, it's going to square Saturn in Aries. On the 23rd, it's going to square Neptune in Aries. On the 24th, it's going to be, at the same place conjunct Jupiter. And then 26th, it'll be sextile Mars. So like the sun is going to come highlight, at the end of June, all these things that are going to be brought up mid-June. So June 15th, if there is ever a period of time that is about power struggles, it is going to be June 15th. And I just want to point out that the way that power dynamics have played out up until this point have been extremely rigid and have been extremely in the favor of one specific group of people. I don't think we need me to spell out which group of people that is. Everybody else is mad. And everybody else is mad either in alliance with that group of people or mad in opposition to that group of people. That's the temperature, that's the vibe right now. And right now, with the huge shift in outer planets, what is true is up for grabs. So people who used to get away with enforcing power in the dominant group, the people at the top of the hierarchy, the way that they used to enforce power used to work. And that's not so clear cut anymore. And people at the bottom, the way that they collect and harness power to stand in opposition, the ways that it wasn't working in the past may not be the case anymore. So the idea that I can't do XYZ because I couldn't do XYZ before, you got to light that on fire. You got to leave that in the dust. Let June 15th be a turning point on that belief because everything is up for grabs right now. And whoever's grabbing it is going to get it. So I really encourage, this is why it's so important to be really mindful of what beliefs you're etching into stone because the stone is wet right now. It's movable. And so you better move that stone. You better be really clear about what you want to believe and about what you want to assert to be true and the ways in which you want to put yourself out there, especially when you're engaging in systemic power structures, whether that's the court systems, whether that's, you know, the stuff that's happening on the streets, whether that's, you know, with people in power or with people in power in the workplace or any of these places, if you're looking for housing, like literally any of these places, you need to be bold and you need to put yourself out there and you need to stand in what you believe to be true for yourself. And you need to have a much more optimistic and like assertive or like determined approach to that. And so I really encourage you, let June 15th be a big turning point for you to assert yourself and assert what you believe to be true, because there is so much more wiggle room on that than you can imagine, and everybody's wiggling. So get in the ring.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
I'm gonna post this June 15th and we'll know what's happening. But right now we don't know. So, we'll catch it with all of you. And the last thing I also wanted to say, I forgot, I just remembered, is that when Stevie's talking about me holding Stevie and being that adult in the room for Stevie, literally at the beginning of this month, I literally did the same thing. I reached out to Stevie and I said, I'm in bits. I'm unwell and I need to be gathered a little bit. I need to be held. And I know what direction I need to go in, but I don't know how to get there because I'm sludging through all of my emotions. And I was like, I've taken the practice you've told me to do in our last reading. I was like, please give me a new reading and tell me what to do next. And so Stevie did. And so I just wanted to name that this is a mutual practice that Stevie and I have, and it's a safety that we've cultivated. As like we said in the beginning, the birth of this was a shitty man uniting against a shitty man, but it's what we've done with it that's really important and so generative and yeah, really encourage that kind of exchange with people that you care about to build that kind of trust and safety with each other where you don't have to be the adult in the room all the time, but by being around somebody who is holding that space for you, you can learn to cultivate it for yourself. So both be an active practice with trying to cultivate that strength within yourself, and also be an active practice of learning from other people and also being that for other people. All good skills to learn. And then lastly, I really wanted to plug, I didn't find a nice, beautiful, organic way to do this, but I need to get better at plugging my stuff. But I have oodles of workshops coming down the pipeline. I have so many workshops coming down the pipeline. So let's go over them because I love to give people practical, actionable resources for how the heck to do any of the stuff that I talk about. And so my workshops are a place where you can put these practices into action. And you are in a guided community space where it's like safe to have questions, it's safe to be stuck, it's safe to, need a little bit of like support in actually trying to make things happen. It's kind of it's a workshop. It's a testing ground for us to figure out how we want to make these things happen. And so the first workshop is actually this.
It's Shroot and Post. I meant Saturday, not Sunday. Thank you.
It's June 14th. It is a Manifest Your Dream Relationship workshop. And the focus here is going to be getting in touch with what you desire, your true desires around how you want to feel in your romantic relationships, how you want others in those relationships to make you feel, and how you want to be an active role. Like, what do you want the dynamic you guys create together to feel like? So this is, applicable if you're partnered, it's applicable if you're single and looking, it's applicable even if you're single and maybe not even looking, but just want to know what you want, what feelings you want to cultivate in your life. And so setting these intentions, helps you find, clarity and helps you find the ability to trust that like you don't know what's going to happen, but these are the emotions that you want to feel. And so what actions can you take in your life to construct those emotions? So that's this Sunday. And if you're listening to this after the 14th, then this is going to be available for download on the shop tab of my website. So all the links for that will be in the show notes. And then the second one is my Mapping Moon Magic. I have a New Moon in Cancer workshop that's going to be on the 21st of June. And we are going to be soaking in all of this expansive Jupiter in Cancer energy because, ooh, a New Moon in Cancer with the Jupiter in Cancer, juicy. I cannot underscore how juicy enough. The new moon in Cancer is always the most potent new moon of the year just because it's literally, Cancer's ruled by the moon. And then add to that this like juiciness of Jupiter expanding whatever it touches. So this is going to be one of the biggest new moons ever, like in the last 12 years for sure, since the last new moon in Cancer with Jupiter co-present. So we're going to be soaking all that in. We're going to be setting intentions around creating this space. So if you're like, yeah, I would love to make space for my emotions, but like I'm scared and it's hard and I don't feel resourced enough to do that, come set the intention to develop and cultivate those resources and structures for yourself. And so that's the 21st. And as usual, that will also be available on the shop tab of my website if you are listening after that. And then in July, I am offering a heart-centered money management manifestation ritual and workshop. And it's a similar vibe of we are going to talk about a framework to manifest a heart-centered, values-oriented, and healthy way to manage your money for yourself and your community at large. And of course, it takes into account all the socioeconomic, political realities, and how to be community-oriented in this. And so we are going to cultivate intentions to develop safety and strength around saving, spending, earning, and investing. That's going to be the things that we set intentions around. So, yeah, so that's going to be on July 19th. And again, it'll be for download on my website. And for all of these, I'm going to offer a special code for all of our Bleeding Hearts listeners. So if any of you are listening and you're like, I want to join, you can use code BHC. And it will give you 30% off for any of these workshops, and the links for everything will be in the show notes, and the code will be in the show notes. You can find everything in the show notes, and I would love to see you there. I would love to be able to hold that space for you to experience putting in these conceptual things into practice in community space. So, yeah, that's my spiel.
Yay.
Anything else, Stevie?
Yeah, if you are based in Long Beach, speaking of just soft places to land, to release, I am holding a grief sound bath in Long Beach on Thursday, June 26th at 6:30 to 8. We'll link the Eventbrite for you to register. It's donation based, it's free, completely up to you. I'd love to see you there. It's just a place where we get to name our grief and what's on our heart and just bear witness to each other, hold that space for ourselves, and lead you through a nice little like 30-minute sound bath. That is 30 minutes. My arms hurt at the end of it, and you just go on your own little journey, and we come back together and close out before we send you back out into the world. Yeah, also, I'm really bad at plugging my own individual services. I can be your trusted adult. I know I said all these things, but I can still be that trusted adult for you if you are looking for any individual support. I do virtual and in-person Reiki sessions. If you're like around-ish Long Beach, we can make something work. Or tarot readings. I am here for you. I would love to support you. I would love to just get to know you too. Links to all of that will be in the show notes. But oh, did you hear that?
I did. That's okay. It was kind of quiet.
Okay.
That was an affirmation.
Yeah, that was affirmation. Beep beep. Hit us up. But yeah, thank you for all that you are and all that you do. And thank you for spending this year with us. Yeah, it's been a trip, and it will continue to be a trip, but in the best ways, I hope.
Yeah, well, it was great to chat with you, Stevie. Love doing this podcast with you. Thanks for being my friend. And we'll see you next month.
Yep, we'll see you next Tuesday.